All right. I want to do a bit of a dive, more so into the concept of imposition as well as spirituality. As with any of these videos, these are serious conversations, subjects for serious minds. Essentially, talking, exposing. Don't even like to say the word exposing. But just bringing about a particular truth that really is known. It's not necessarily anything new being said, but it's just something not necessarily willingly viewed by most. There's a quote that I will recite from Abdullah al-Qasimi. Essentially, this will be the basis to the video, because with quotes, you can take it and run with it, and you can clearly make a whole video off of it. Quote saying, all human actions are nothing more than attempts to heal the mistake of their existence. Sit on that for a moment. All human actions are nothing more than attempts to heal the mistake of their existence. Meditating on that can really let you know the true issue going on. The very fact that there's an issue to begin with. These concepts of good and bad, they're byproducts. It's describing something, a situation. This topic of just life. The very fact that we think that there's different perspectives and different viewpoints to how this life is a bit not true, in the sense that we're essentially characterizing our value judgment off of a certain picture, the picture that is life, the function of life. Then we're making a value judgment off of that. But we're essentially just describing things. So more so than just labeling things, we're describing what that thing is. So to instead of getting in the place of subjectivity with words like that, and that's fine, but it's more so the byproduct in the sense that you're using such words of, evil, bad, good, whatever, to again describe things that are going on. So sometimes we get hyper-focused on how we think or feel about a certain situation, but what do we actually know? More than anything, we want to get into the place of knowing. And within regards to antinatalism, efilism, pretty much abstaining from this, two of the core values with that are suffering and imposition, being the basis of suffering, having to alleviate oneself from a particular state that you would at least rather not be in. And with the concept of imposition, first off, being in that suffering mode to begin with. So those are the two core elements to this, but more than not, it really just deals with the imposition, because before you can truly suffer, you have to be imposed to yield that ability to suffer in the first place. So the imposition factor is really the main cause issue at play here. I think it's a bit of a silly idea that people can't grasp the understanding that is addressed within the fact of how, we don't necessarily consent to this existence. That we are imposed. This is a imposition, very much so, that we are not having the full volition to this contract. This is, very fact that it's a contract. You're in a way imposed to have to do. Who would want to have to be in a place to have to do that in the first place? This is just silly that people don't understand that life is an imposition. That people, not that I really go on the different internet forums nowadays and what have you, but it was just a prominent thing I used to see and hear, people looking to make a refutation off of the basis of how this is a lack of sovereignty for the unborn. that, of course, they don't have any say in being placed here to come here and die. And essentially, again, it goes back to the imposition. It's the same thing, consent, imposition, tomato, tomato. And that's, again, the basis to the faultiness here. The very fact that we're working within a framework that is not your framework. It's just from that level. It doesn't make, it's very subordinate, very subordinate. And it inevitably leads to deficiencies. The deficiencies that comes with existence is first being imposed into existence in the first place to then suffer. So, again, imposition, that's really where it starts. That's the value trait that I really look at more than anything. That's why we see how tyranny exists in the world, and why we're in a way okay with it. When it comes to, the municipalities, the communities that we have within each other, with our local, federal, national, geopolitical government bodies. It's just, again, a bunch of impositions upon impositions. We're having to be just, dependent on other people. Just the whole concept of something like a, government. We like to think of the concept, but, these are people just like you or I. So we're weighing and putting a lot of value to people for the betterment of ourselves. That's not a good scenario to have to work with. I'm sorry. It's just the very fact that you're having to succumb to the position of having to force others in a way to essentially help you out. The very fact that that's the basis of what we have to do in a civilization. You have to pick my back and I'll pick your back too. The very fact that we're having to do this picking game, it's very, very unfortunate, very unfortunate. But yeah, it really doesn't make sense to have faith in man. Just to be frank, having faith in man is where you will find your troubles, because man is greedy, man is selfish. So you're working off of that foundation for them to then help you when that's never their true concern. So again, having to depend on others is not cool. To have that as a need, we have to need to depend on others. That's just what it is. It's a need that we just have as a given now. That's not a good reality. And even before the tyranny of mankind with civilization, it truly becomes before that the tyranny of nature. It just goes back to, again, imposition. The first brainwashing is not, in the classroom with religion or whatever outside superstructure. No, it really starts at home. It starts with our parents. Our first way of brainwashing is with the upbringing that they do during our childhood. More so than not, your parents are your teachers. You can, go to school and, learn this or that. But coming back home, especially in those early years, get them while they're young, while they're young stars. Those early years that you get cultivated with your parents are really very important and really set the tone and effect of how a lot of things play forth. So yeah, that first level of brainwashing starts with the mother and father. Just that, basis of tyranny, the imposition that comes from that type of start. It goes back to that core issue of dependency, of seeking alleviation out of one state for another. But back to the social structure with civilization, you have things like, insurance, security, transportation, finance. These are just all impositions, things that we have to now do. This was not something that we, ever had a say in. And now here we are having to, upkeep these certain avenues for whatever reason to why we're here to begin with. Even the fact that you have to be around people. I'm sure, there's simple sayings that people say that most people are dumb, most people are this, that, and the fourth, a negative connotation. So if that's the case, that most people are a particular optic that we would not rather be associated with, why are we then placing ourselves around most people, around this society? It doesn't, make sense that we are essentially loathing being around others, but then we're trying to, not people necessarily hearing this, but, in general, people, we look to promote this world more than what it really is worth. Again, it's just as simple as just being around other people. I don't know about you guys, but I would rather not be around most people already. So the very fact that you're imposed to have to be within that type of framework should let you know the detriment that you're in right now. But even the fact that you're listening to these videos, I've talked to some people, I'm just like, why am I even making these videos? I don't think I'm saying much. It might be a different twist on things or whatever, but the fact that, I feel the need to even make this type of, so you really had to look at all avenues of existence. Because again, all human actions are nothing more than attempts to heal the mistake of their existence. So again, that quote can really go a long way. It doesn't make sense when you really look at what we're doing here. But more than anything, I know I was talking about imposition with, the state, imposition with your family, society, but it starts with the body. That imposing factor of this, pretty much animal suit that we call the human flesh. It's really, we like to say that, this is the temple of whatever, but these life forms are really not valuable. Valuable in the sense that they are always in a constant state of need. So in a way, they're really valueless. They're always seeking some type of higher point that it's not currently at. All the levels of fulfillment and cravings that we have, that we want to have fulfilled. Essentially, being alive is just being hungry. You're tasked with all these, ever needing things for your ever deficient self. They say the body is essentially a tomb. I've heard it's a walking tumor. We're essentially walking tumors because we're a ticking time bomb. So you talk about imposition. You're imposed to die. You're imposed to be in a death state. Life is a death state. So again, it's funny that people talk about how birth isn't an imposition. How we the consent thing doesn't make sense. But then we have all these things that are non-consensual within existence. But then we want to, so it's silly. It's silly. It's, with life, as I'm saying, it's a hunger game. We always have to eat. Why are we always in this constant state of needing fuel? Why are we thinking that it's pretty advantageous to look to try to get above universal law, this survival system. We're looking to play with this matter game. It's really not the thing to do. Really not the thing to do. To try to relate in reference to a channel that I have respect for, but when you really look at what it is, it's pretty sick in a way. Very smart guy. His name Andrew Huberman. He's some type of neurochemist biologist, and he focuses on areas around like dopamine, looking to regain and improve people's focus, building better habits, essentially. And, people will watch videos and different content that type of person or people will make, essentially just self-improvement. And, they will talk about how great of a thing that is to self-improve. But again, the topic of this imposition, the very fact that you're imposed to have to be in this need of having to self-improve for whatever reason that you would want to justify for your self-improvement for, it's just, again, subordinate. It's just suffering. I mean, why are we having to do all these things? Why are we not already whole? So, you just essentially look at anything that we are essentially doing, we're really, again, fixing the mistake of our existence. That's just what it comes down to. When you look at anything that we're praising ourselves for, it's just a constant state of fixing and upkeeping. So the imposition of death is just clear as day. Anyone in existence is currently being kicked out. If you're able to understand imposition, just that concept alone, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all to, really be behind most things that people are behind. It doesn't make sense. And if anything, with that force of imposition, it leads to certain ideas that people say with, the video cut off a bit, but in regards to that force, imposition is pretty much a overarching force. There's, metaphysical concepts with things like the archons, demiurge, how this, world is essentially a trap, that there are forces above us that are feeding off of us, our emotions, our thoughts, our being. Essentially from that, it's at the very bottom, though, ourselves that are feeding off of it. It's just different versions of our, concept of self. There's tendencies that we would rather not just do within our own self that we are forced to do in a certain sense just by impulse alone. You talk about your own compulsive behaviors that you don't have much of a say in. The very fact that you're having to contemplate not doing something, overdoing something, or vice versa, what have you. This imposition runs pretty deep. So with that, you should be able to look at the faultiness not only around you, with the world, but, with oneself. I think a lot of times we like to place the blame on other people, other things, what have you. But you should, be humble in the sense that you should be placing blame on yourself. You should see the faultiness within your own self. I don't think of myself as any higher, truthfully, than any other person per se. We're all on the same scale here in this, world that we call the animal zoo. But when it comes to the concept of spirituality, it's pretty much just reversing this process. It's just having that, I don't know what type of trait you want to say, compassion, empathy, heart, of just knowing that, this should not be. So you want to essentially go back to what was before. It's not necessarily that you're running away from something, like running away from this existence, abstaining from this existence per se. It's more so running towards something else rather. These things you can say, whether it's, non-being, the unconscious state, the primordial. It's more than, what is currently this, for the sense that we find ourselves in. So the concept of religion is essentially seeking that higher state that we currently cannot experience right now. If you're not really able to understand with religion, spirituality is essentially dealing with the process of death. then you're pretty lost. That's where it starts. We're dealing with death. That's where it comes down to. Um, and if this is what people are ultimately living for, i.e., religion, that's what, the basis of what people say that they are looking to do more than anything, then why would you cultivate anything here? It doesn't even make sense to talk about having, human beings to come here and die. Well, why would you be religious and then have to put somebody in that problem that you're trying to fix for yourself, where that this is temporary, but now you're putting somebody here for essentially your reason? We talk about religion, different concepts that you learn. Now, these aren't necessarily our thoughts per se, and now we're imposing something that was imposed upon us to somebody else with something that's not guaranteed. So it's not cool. Not cool. So yeah, with conventional spirituality, it doesn't really make sense. With spirituality, religion, all these things, it's an internal process. So if what you're here for is an internal process, then why would you be placed in a sense perception with this external framework of a world? It's pointless. Why would you be in a state of a, craving, hungry body for a purpose of internalization? I mean, it just is so backwards. It's so backwards. You can generate internal happiness. In many ways, it would come at spite of this world. But so just why then are you in this world when, in many respects, you're taught to have to come out of it? Again, spirituality, these are an internal thing. So I don't think people are truly spiritual, because if so, we would have to all act accordingly. There's simple things. Shout out to Christopher Sideris. I'll add him on the video description. One of his videos, he mentioned, and I'm just paraphrasing, and this is for anybody, because this is just essentially saying mind over matter. That being that, we're a spiritual self, spiritual being, where we're not essentially calibrated, we're not compatible with our physical self, that these two things are not aligned with each other, our spiritual sense and the physical sense. These two are very much so far apart, opposing to one another. So, with that spiritual sense, you're yearning for more than what the world can offer you. The thing is that we naturally cling onto this reality as if this is the most valuable, state, when it's really not. This reality is the byproduct, of, the prior state, unconscious, non-being, primordial, whatever you want to, call it. But, that's where it starts. Life comes from, you can call it death, non-being, the unconscious, but life comes from that. It comes out of that. So, with religion and the process and consideration, contemplation of death, that must be greater than life. So, we to truly understand that your life is truly valueless in that sense, that this comes and goes, but, that eternal will always be. It is, the foundation to anything else that you can ever perceive. Then you start to put things to where it really is. And again, death that's just a fact, non-being, non-dual is just greater than what we currently are rooted in this materialistic sense. Non-being is that true value, that comes with this. It's just the more potent source. We like to say things with meditation. The first thing with meditation that we do, we close our eyes. So, it already shuts off that sense perception, letting us know that to truly be, eternal, internal, it starts with first understanding where it starts, and it starts with that non-being. So, with the duality, having, the dual forms that we have with two eyes, arms, legs, ears, hands, feet, what have you. This is not the wave, to be frank. So with spirituality, it's essentially, again, reversing that process, seeing the true energy source. And the true energy source, the whole concept of energy, when you're in a dual state, you have the opposite of that. You have the need to be energized. But when you're in a non-dual state, it just is. It's already energy in and of itself. So you don't even need this concept. So you talk about words and language, imposition. But yeah, with spirituality again, it's truly just understanding, again, with imposition, the faultiness that comes with this, and then we should know then the pathway that we should be on.